Today we're going to be talking about why it's so hard to change. You have big plans, you want to do big things, but a year later you're still doing the exact thing you're doing today. It's called status quo bias, and we're going to talk about how you can overcome it. Coming up next. Hi everybody. My name is Dee Burks, and this is Retirement Rescue, where we talk about how to make money, save money, and live the best life you can. Well, part of living that best life is change. You've got to really embrace change if you want to move forward. Well, today we're going to talk about status quo bias. Status quo bias is that natural tendency to not change, to keep everything the same. It's our natural preference for inaction, doing nothing, and we're really good at doing nothing. And of course, you have big ideas. Maybe you want to start that side gig. Maybe you want to change jobs. Maybe you want to change relationships. Maybe you want to live somewhere different that inspires you. But here again, you just haven't done it. Why? Status quo bias can really be broken down into four main areas, four reasons that we can't seem to motivate ourselves to change. And the first of those reasons is a preference for stability. Honestly, we just get comfortable. I mean, who doesn't hate uncertainty? And in order to change, you have to embrace that uncertainty. And we're all creatures of habit. So the biggest reason it's hard to change is because we are in that comfort zone. And stepping out of that comfort zone is scary. It feels scary. It's really not that scary, but it feels scary. We're used to doing what we're doing. The perception of change is way bigger, way harder than the actual change itself. Let me give you an example. Let's say you've lived in an apartment, you live in an apartment, and you've lived there for a number of years, and you'd love to have a better place, but your perception is really nice places cost a whole lot more. You'd have to move, and everybody hates to move, and it's just a pain. So you just stay where you're at. 1 year turns to 2, 2 turns to 5, 5 turns to 10. And now the apartments you're in are run down, they have maintenance issues, they're old, and you still haven't changed. Well, the truth is the difference between your status quo and where you want to be is much smaller than you think. The second reason is we perceive there's a bigger cost to change than there really is. I mean, we downplay the cost of how we're living right now, and we enhance the cost of that change. Let me give you an example. Let's say you want to get a job closer to work, but you just haven't. Maybe the place you live is a little bit older, you're wanting to kind of upgrade, but in your mind you think, well, the cost to do that's going to be so much more. But guess what? It's not. I just went through this with one of my kids. It's not. You get so used to doing what you're doing, you don't realize the difference between where you are and where you want to be is very, very small. And inevitably, when you investigate it, you realize, oh my gosh, I could have done this years ago and been way better off. But it's that whole perception that it's going to cost more, it's going to be so much bigger, it's just not what we're used to. Completely wrong. I cannot tell you how many people that I've talked to about this one idea that have said, well, I think I'd really like to live at the beach, but I don't really have that kind of money, and it's expensive, and blah, blah, blah. Have they really checked it out? All those people who work in restaurants at the beach, who work at the hotels, who have service jobs, who, have other sorts of trade jobs, they all live next to the beach. It's not what you think it is. Living somewhere else or changing your life in some way is not necessarily a huge cost. In fact, it could save you money. Let's go back to the example of moving apartments. Let's say you do move. Now you're 5 minutes away from work instead of having a 30-minute commute. Not only does that save you money, it saves you stress. It saves you time. Now you're in a much nicer, newer apartment. Doesn't have the maintenance issues. It's energy efficient, so your utilities go down. The new place now has a full gym with it and a swimming pool. You don't have to have a gym membership. Come to find out, you're going to be spending the same amount of money, but your life is incredibly enhanced. Those are the kind of things you really want to think about. If you really want to be somewhere else and live differently, you can do so much easier and much cheaper than you think. But status quo bias will convince you it costs a lot more when it really doesn't. Now, the third area of status quo bias is choice difficulty. You get analysis paralysis. Once you start looking at doing something different, let's say it's doing a side gig, you realize there are so many options. You check them out. You start checking out this one and checking out this one and checking out this one. Before you know it, you haven't done any of them. All you've done is research. That is analysis paralysis. The fear that you're going to make the wrong choice stops you from making any choice. And that hurts you in the long run. And the cure for that, stop thinking, start doing. Start actually making steps. Pick the side gig that you most connect with and do that. If it doesn't work out, so what? You can do another one. It's not a big deal. But pick the one that really connects with you and go for it. Don't keep investigating everything that comes along. Pick something and do it. That will get you out of that analysis paralysis. And number 4 is the anticipation of regret. Let me give you an example of this one. Someone who really doesn't like their job. Oh, they want a different job, but they never seem to really apply for any jobs. And when you ask them why, they will say something like, well, but what if I don't like it? What if it ends up being a mistake? But what if it doesn't? If it ends up being a mistake, you just go get another job. It's not that big a deal. It's that same idea of someone holding on to something that they absolutely dislike because doing something else might be a mistake. That fear of making a mistake keeps people from advancing. They could advance much farther, much faster, but they get that fear. And the fear is completely unfounded. We all make mistakes. If you're in a job that you hate, that was a mistake. You just don't have the courage to call it that yet. Now, we have all been in situations that we thought were good decisions at the beginning, and they were. But then they turned into something we didn't anticipate. And it's almost like we believe that if we cut it off at that point, whatever it is, job, relationship, where you live, whatever it is, if we cut it off at that point, then we're basically taking the blame for making that bad decision. Well, guess what? We make mistakes all the time. We make bad decisions all the time. We don't have to wallow in them. So stop wallowing. Start doing. Status quo bias will hold you back so much in your life. It convinces you things are hard when they're not. It convinces you you can't make money when you can. It convinces you, oh, time has passed you by when it hasn't. You know, it will convince you that you can't go and do and be when you can. The only thing that's stopping you is you, and this bias is all about you. Now, if you found this video helpful, please click subscribe, and I'll see you next time.